It was a warm Saturday afternoon in a busy parking lot outside Tully's grocery store in Grantville. The sun beat down on the cars, their engines humming as people hurried to and from the store, their shopping carts filled with the week's essentials. Alana Foster, a strong and kind-hearted woman in her 30s, had just finished her grocery shopping with her 12-year-old daughter, Maya. They were preparing to head home, the trunk of their car now filled with bags of food. Alana had lived in Grantville for a few years now. Though she was friendly and respectful, she was known to keep to herself, preferring the quiet of her own company. She had no reason to expect anything unusual on this Saturday afternoon, just another typical day. The small town had always felt safe and calm, and she was grateful for that. But little did Alana know, this trip to the store would change everything. As Alana and Maya loaded the groceries into the trunk, the sound of tires on the asphalt drew their attention. A police car pulled up beside them, its sirens off, but the flashing lights reflected in the parking lot's windows. Officer Hank Parker, a middle-aged man with a reputation that preceded him, stepped out of the car. He was known in town, but not in a positive light. Many people, especially those who didn't look like him, had crossed paths with him before, and not in a good way. Alana didn't recognize Hank personally, but she had heard the stories. She didn't want to jump to conclusions, but the moment his cold eyes met hers, she felt a twinge of discomfort. "Ma'am," Hank said, his voice gruff and authoritative. What are you doing here?" Alana blinked, surprised by his tone. She had only been going about her business, like any other Saturday. "Just shopping," she replied calmly, gesturing toward the grocery bags in her trunk. But Hank wasn't satisfied with the simple answer. He stepped closer, his gaze narrowing. "I need to see your ID. You're acting suspicious." Alana's brows furrowed in confusion, her heart beginning to race. What could possibly be suspicious about her? She was just a mother, trying to get some food for her family. Maya, sensing the tension, moved a little closer to her mother, her young face filled with concern. Alana, though taken aback, kept her voice steady. "Officer, we just bought groceries. There's nothing wrong here." Hank's expression twisted with frustration, and without a word, he reached out and grabbed Alana's arm firmly. "I said show me your ID," he snapped. Maya gasped, her small hands trembling as she pulled out her phone and began recording. Alana didn't stop her daughter. She knew it was important to have everything documented just in case. Maya's fingers shook as she held the phone, her eyes wide with fear, while the scene around them began to draw attention. Some bystanders paused in their tracks, sensing something wasn't right. They stopped to watch, and a few of them pulled out their own phones to record. The growing crowd made Hank visibly uncomfortable. He didn't like being observed. His grip on Alana's arm tightened, and without warning, he shoved her back against the car. "Stop resisting," Hank barked, even though Alana wasn't resisting at all. Alana could feel her patience slipping, but she knew she had to remain calm. Her mind raced, but her body stayed steady. This wasn't right, but she had to think clearly. Alana had trained herself for moments like this. She had always been ready for anything, especially when it came to protecting herself and her daughter. Hank had no idea who he was dealing with. "You don't have the right to do this," Alana said, her voice steady but firm. "Let go of me," Hank sneered, his face contorting in anger. "You think you're tough. You people never know when to stay quiet." The words hit Alana like a punch to the gut. That was the final straw. In an instant, her training kicked in. With a swift twist, she freed herself from Hank's grasp. He stumbled back, momentarily caught off guard. The crowd gasped in surprise. Hank hadn't expected that. Alana quickly took a defensive stance, her body low and her feet planted firmly on the ground. She was ready for whatever he would do next. The crowd grew in size, people pulling out their phones to record. Whispers of shock and disbelief spread through the onlookers. No one had ever seen someone stand up to Officer Hank this way. Many were waiting to see how this would unfold, wondering who would come out on top. Hank's face turned red with rage. He lunged at Alana, determined to overpower her. But what he didn't realize was that Alana had been trained in karate for years. She knew how to handle herself in a situation like this. As Hank charged, Alana sidestepped, using her hands to redirect his momentum. He stumbled but quickly regained his balance. His anger was growing, but Alana's calm was unshakable. "You're going to regret this," Hank growled, his words thick with fury. "You have no idea who you're dealing with." Alana's expression remained calm. She took a deep breath and spoke evenly. "I'm just defending myself, officer. Please stop." But Hank was beyond reason now. His frustration boiled over, and he reached for his baton, pulling it from its holster. The crowd gasped as the officer raised the baton, a dangerous glint in his eyes. He was ready to use it to intimidate Alana, to put an end to her resistance. Maya's heart pounded in her chest. She continued to record, her fingers gripping the phone tightly, trying not to let the tears fall. Alana knew she had to act fast. She had no choice but to protect herself fully. As Hank swung the baton toward her, Alana ducked under the strike, narrowly avoiding the blow. With lightning speed, she swept his legs out from under him, sending him crashing to the ground. The crowd watched in stunned silence. Hank scrambled to his feet, his pride hurt more than his body. He swung the baton again, but Alana was ready. She blocked his strike, her movements swift and precise. Every time Hank tried to hit her, she countered with a move that left him off balance and humiliated. The crowd was now cheering, some shouting words of encouragement to Alana. This was no longer just a confrontation, it had turned into a stand for justice. Hank, now realizing he was outmatched, hesitated. His face, once full of anger, now showed fear. But it was too late. Alana had the upper hand. With one final, quick move, she disarmed him, sending his baton flying out of his reach. Hank lay on the ground, panting, defeated. The crowd went silent, still processing what they had just witnessed. Maya stopped recording, her phone now trembling in her hands. Alana stood over him, breathing heavily but composed. Her voice was steady, full of strength as she asked, "Are you done?" Hank didn't respond. He couldn't bring himself to look her in the eye. By now, more police cars had arrived, their sirens blaring as they pulled into the parking lot. Officers stepped out of their vehicles and looked from Hank, who was sprawled on the ground, to Alana, standing tall and confident. One officer, Sergeant Brooks, approached cautiously. "Ma'am, can you explain what happened here?" Alana took a deep breath and recounted the events calmly. Her words were supported by the murmurs of the crowd and the many videos people had taken of the incident. Maya handed her phone to Sergeant Brooks, showing him the entire recording. Sergeant Brooks reviewed the footage, his expression shifting from skepticism to understanding. It was clear from the video that Hank had been the aggressor and that Alana had only defended herself. "Thank you, ma'am," Sergeant Brooks said, nodding in respect. Then he turned to Hank. "Officer Parker, you're under investigation for misconduct." Hank's face drained of color as he was escorted to a patrol car. His career was now hanging by a thread. The crowd began to disperse, but not before a few people approached Alana to thank her for standing up for herself and her daughter. Maya hugged her mother tightly, relief washing over her. The ordeal had come to an end, and Alana had made sure that justice was served. In the days that followed, Alana became somewhat of a local hero. Her story spread throughout Grantville, reminding everyone that justice could be served, even when the odds seemed stacked against you. And as for Hank, he faced disciplinary action and was eventually removed from the force. Alana never intended to become a symbol of resilience, but her courage that day left a lasting impression on everyone who witnessed it. She had shown the world that even in the face of adversity, one person's strength and determination could make a difference. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel, Unfolded Tales Explained. Hit the bell icon so you never miss another fascinating story. Have a wonderful day.